Hey everyone, Dan here. Before we get into it, if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe button. And keep in mind that these are my own thoughts, opinions, and ideas. These are not meant to be, nor should you take them as investment or trading advice in any way, shape, or form. Do your own due diligence, put in the work for yourself, and make your decisions based on that. Enjoy. All right, folks, here we are on Saturday, February 17th. We're going to take a look at Tell today. So Tell has been pushing nicely since we had this downtrend resistance that it broke. And all too often for stocks that are long distressed like this, my big worry is always that it's going to come right back down and start testing that downtrend resistance again. But so far, Tell has been making a really strong break for it. You see here, we finished Friday up over 8%, push over 11% on that day, 16%. So yeah, back-to-back days of really strong pushes, including the 18% push that got it out from under the downtrend resistance 11, 18, and then yeah, just continuing to back those up as it approaches nearer and nearer to that dollar level. So the levels that I have in the chart that we've had on here for a while, I think they're holding up quite nicely. For the time being, the nearest in support level that I have down here, 84.78. So if it does pull back a little bit, right, doesn't necessarily mean the end of the world. We saw it happen here. This day it pulled down about 4%, regrouped, and actually had quite a dip the following day as well, but then was able to push through. So if it does dip, 84.78, we'll see what it does there, right? That's always the question. What does it do when it gets to these levels? Does it treat it as support? Does it struggle with it? Does it start to slip and maybe start treating it as resistance, right? Then it gets a little bit questionable. The nearest in resistance level is that approach to $1. So I have it in it as 9660. Psychologically speaking, it is probably just that question of as it approaches $1, investors may start going, are we really going to push this to $1? Are we going to push it over $1? Right? So obviously you saw that struggle here with this candle. On this day, came down a little over 7%. It tried to push through on this day, brought it up over 7.5%. But, it stretched to 105. But, at that point, obviously, folks just kind of felt like we can't hold this over $1. For whatever reason, pulled back down all the way down at that point. That was the stretch that brought it down to 35. So we'll see if it taps on that door again. Is the selling pressure still there? And if it is, to what degree does it stand in the face of the buying pressure? Because obviously the buying pressure, dominating force for the time being. Now, if it does stretch above there and starts putting some action above that 9660, we can come in and add some levels above there. I didn't want to clutter the chart too much by putting in a bunch of additional levels. Now, I left these levels below, so we have many more levels below, but that's just because we already had them on the chart. So if it does slip that 84.78, 75, 6664, 61, and 53 look like the strongish levels to me. All right, now we're going to flip over to the Think or Swim study. Okay, so here on the Think or Swim side of things, we see, nothing happening really on the TTM squeeze indicator. We had a trigger, a very brief trigger, and a fire back here that brought in this sort of roller coaster, right? Strong move up after, and then sort of an equal but opposite strong move down. Pushed up out of the upper bound of the channel, and then pretty succinctly fell through the lower bound of the channel. Now we're pushed back up out of the upper bound of the channel again. So sort of continuing that pattern of, hey, we're out of the lower bound of the channel. Let's get ourselves through the upper bound of the channel. Let's work all the way through and out the bottom. Let's work all the way through and through the top. So we'll see what this means or what this brings. You can even see it here on the wave cloud, right? Deep red wave cloud, that was the drawdown. And then brief bump to green, brief bump to red, and so far, brief bump to green. So we'll see how that lasts, how it digests it. It can certainly spend more time out of the channel. We see here on the downside, it spent quite a bit of time out of the downside of the channel there. Obviously, since the stock has been more distressed than impressed, it has tended to draw down harder than it has pushed back to the upside. So, our biggest example here is to the downside, but I don't have a doubt that if it does get, for whatever reason, some wind at its back and some buyers coming in, what have you, that it could spend a reasonable amount of time outside of the upper bound of the channel as well. This channel being dynamic, it's going to drag these bounds with the price action. And so the channel is going to chase the price action just as much as the price action is eventually going to sort of stabilize or dip back down to re-engage with the channel. So if that takes place, we'll take a look at what that situation is if and when it occurs. Now, otherwise, being that it is already out of the channel, it could certainly come in relatively quickly and test the mid-range, that bright blue line in the middle of the channel. And if it does, be interested to see what it does at that point. If recent history is any indication, it would likely try and push down through the lower bound of the channel. But, this is just a pattern that's been happening recently. All patterns eventually break. So we'll see, what even occurs. But without getting too far ahead of ourselves, and certainly no crystal balls here, I'm mostly just interested to see, can it persist? Because it's put in quite a move. And the question is just, what is the staying power of any of these moves? Now, I did check out the short interest. There's potentially something interesting happening because the stock price is moving against short sellers. Market beat has the short interest rate now at about 18%. So to me, I count anything in the double digits as being relatively high. And so 18% is up there a bit, and that data is a little bit old, right? We're getting this delayed data. So the question is, have any of those closed out and started to lead to this rise, or contributed to the rise, or are they still there, sort of in a losing trade at the moment because the stock price is incessantly going against them? There's a lot of them that are shorting the stock, and potentially getting into a weird situation there. Now, I did check out the fee to borrow per iBorrowDesk, and that's the only data source I have access to at the moment that will show me the fee. The fee right now looks like it's about 1%, maybe even less. So that is sort of the third component that I always look for to say, could a short squeeze really happen here? You need the price to be clearly going against the shorts. That's happening, I would say, right? It came up from 35 up into the 80s or even 90s at this point. So that's percentage-wise huge. So price is clearly going against. You need a high percentage short. It's 18, like I said. To me, I would consider that high. But then you also need the fee to be very high. And what I look for very high, ideally, near or over 100 is great. But even something like 50% or more can maybe move the needle, but certainly not 1%. So if that component starts to come in and play a factor, and that fee, for whatever reason, starts to creep up, so now they're paying a big fee, the price is going against them, so they're losing on the trade anyway, and there's a lot of them. If that's the case, and they start to, have this domino effect of buying up shares to cover their short, maybe it happens, but that fee is not there right now as far as I can tell. So we'll see if that changes in the coming days or weeks. But aside from all of that, Tell would need to keep on its trajectory. Again, it doesn't mean that it can't have some healthy pullbacks here and there. It doesn't mean that it can't, put in a flag or a pennant or stabilize in some way and then carry on. But, it's going to be persistently important that it continues on somewhat of an upward trajectory, even if it can't maintain something as steep as this one here. That's going to, of course, be paramount for any of this to continue to take shape. And if not, we have the levels below, and we could see where it lands, where it settles, if it does pull back. All right, folks, I hope that you're enjoying your long weekend. And as always, I appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the next video.